Hi friends, Phil here, and in this video I'm going to be taking you through step by step another simple landscape scene with your pastel pencils. Now this is another great lesson like the one previous for newcomers because it's simple to draw out again, and it's also going to take you through those fundamentals of layering and blending. It's also nice and quick. This one's a quick sketchy style that I think you'll enjoy. If you haven't seen that first one, do check that one out as well because the two of them complement each other quite well. You'll find the list of materials and the reference photograph that you need in the description beneath this video. Now at the start of this lesson, I do spend some time taking you through a colour selection process, and it's a recurring theme that you'll notice in a lot of my lessons that involve colour, so pastel pencils, coloured pencils, or even watercolour and pen. The reason that this is so important and that I really feel like I need to encourage you not to skip through that section is because selecting your colours ahead of time makes your life so much easier. Because what it does is it stops you from having to obsess over all the different colour choices you've got when you've got dozens of pencils laid out in front of you and you're thinking, should I go with that one or that one or that one? By reducing the number of decisions that you've got to make, that decision-making fatigue that we call it, it helps you to get into that right brain state, which then helps you to get into that flow where you make better artwork and you enjoy the process more. So what we do is we select some colours, test them out on a bit of scrap paper, we put the rest of the tin to one side, all your pencils then go away, and then you can focus on that limited number of colours and, more importantly, those values, those lights and darks, because it is much more about those values than it is about perfect colour matches. And finally, I did film this lesson quite a few years ago now for a website called Art Tutor. That website doesn't exist anymore, which is why I'm now putting all of these videos onto the YouTube channel. And it's great to see that I haven't aged one bit in all that time. Moving swiftly on, enjoy the lesson. Any questions or comments, pop them below and I'll get to them as soon as I can. For colour choice then, I'm going to run through this really quickly. It's very similar to the other lessons that we've done so far, maybe with a couple of additions in there. I've got a scrap piece of paper, which is the same as the surface I'm going to be working on. This is Canson Mi Tents again, and as you can see, it's a darker tone than I've used previously. So this is a mid to dark brown. I could just as easily have gone for a mid to dark grey. The reason that I've chosen a darker colour is because wanting to keep this faster and looser, with there being lots of dark values in the reference material, that's just going to save me time having to fill in every last piece. So if I miss a little bit, it's not going to be too much of a problem because the surface isn't going to be really stark that's showing through. Now what I'm going to try and do is stick to maybe a couple of colours, a couple of pencils for each colour. So I'm going to have a couple of greens, a couple of yellows, a couple of browns and so on. The first two colours, let's go for two monochrome colours at the extreme ends of the scale, the white and the black. So the white is obvious, there's plenty of white in there, the sky, the waterfall, and then we've got lots of very dark values within the rocks there. So you can check first what that looks like on your paper, and don't worry about it being a dark value because both the black and the white will show up really nicely on that. So that's those two. And then a couple of yellows. So I've got a lighter yellow here, which is a 102. And that's just for some of the brighter leaves that I can see. I'm anticipating that I'm going to have to work some quite light colours over the darker ones. So I want something that is reasonably light. And then I think we should go for a more canary yellow as well. So this one is the 184. And that looks quite nice. So there's our two yellows, the 104 and, sorry, the 184 and the 102. And then a couple of greens. So we can go for a lighter green. I've got a couple I can choose from. This is a 186. I've referred to that as an apple green. I think that looks quite nice, 186. And then a darker green, more olivey green. This is a 173. So that looks okay. Let me just go for a different one, see how that compares. So that's quite nice as well. I could go for either of those. I think I'll go for this bottom one, which is a 165. But again, it really doesn't matter. Both are going to work okay. And then a couple of oranges as well. There's lots of orange leaves in this. So we've got some orange tones on the rocks as well. So again, let's go for a slightly lighter one and a slightly darker one. So for the lighter one, this is a 186. And that's really nice. There is another pencil that's very, very similar to this. Similar colour, and what you can do is just lay the two side by side just to see which works better. Now they're so similar that you would never choose those two pencils, but this one, when I was laying it down, definitely feels like it grabs the surface, this particular surface, better. So I'm going to go for that one, and that is a 186. And then for a darker orange, or a bit more of a reddy orange, I can see some red tones in the trees here, maybe some in the leaves, touches here and there. So this is a 188, and that's a really nice colour, that's grabbing the surface as well. So there's our two orange colours. And then lots of browns in here as well, isn't there? Now the paper obviously is brown, so we can allow some of the paper surface to go through. But even so, I'm going to allow myself a couple of browns. This is a 177. So that's a darker brown, that's quite nice. So we'll keep that one. And then a lighter brown, we've got this one here, which is a 179. Okay, so that is so similar to the paper surface, I think that would be a waste of a pencil. So I'm going to put that one back. So I want a lighter brown, maybe a bit more of a yellowy brown. So this 182 I know is quite a nice pencil. I think that one's a better one, it's lighter. Certainly there's a difference between the paper surface, so let's go for that one. You can tell I've used that one quite a lot. There's not a lot of pencil left to that one. And then finally, a couple of greys. So greys for in the rocks. Again, a lighter one and a darker one. The lightest grey I can see in the set of 36 is a 273. That's a nice one. And then we want a darker grey, just to give some variation to the black so things aren't too flat. So this is a 181. So it's like a gunmetal grey. There's another one that's quite similar. This is a 175. So either of those are quite nice. I'm going to go for, let's see, the 175. Okay, the only other colour, maybe that's not necessarily within the reference, but I think would look quite nice, is a little touch of blue in the sky. So we only want it very, very subtle. The lightest blue that I've got available to me in the set of 36 is a 140. We can just see what that looks like. It's going to be far too strong, but mixed with our white pencil, certainly if we put the white down first, very light touch of the blue on the top, I think that'll give a nice variation to the white that's just in the reference. And we can maybe pick some of those blues up in some of the rocks, particularly where it's wet. So that's the pencils and the paper surface taken care of. There's just one more important thing that I'd like to take you through before we make a start on the painting. Now I am going to restrict myself somewhat by focusing on the top parts of the sky and the trees first maybe, and then the rocks secondly, and then do the water at the end. And that way I can get into a feel of, say, tree texture, and then I can get a feel for rock texture and then water texture. And it's just a nice balance between having, you know, the freedom to jump where you want to, but having too much freedom that it becomes a little bit overwhelming and you're thinking, you know, should I go here next or should I go there next? You want to try and limit yourself just a little bit. Okay, and with that said, I think it's time to make a start. Now for an initial line drawing, very often with this type of style, I wouldn't even bother with a drawing. So I might start with this tree here and put that in and then work the drawing up from that position. But if this looser style is something that's a bit newer to you and you're just working with it, having a little bit of an outline drawing to begin with just helps you to then have the confidence to really let go. So I'm going to put a really rough and ready outline drawing in, just of the major shapes, the major positions, and then that way we can start laying down some of the tones quite quickly. Now something to mention about this composition, which I think is quite important. You'll notice that the waterfall is right in the centre of the picture plane. So it splits the picture plane in two. If you've heard about the rule of thirds, which is not a rule, I try to refer to it as a principle. What that would suggest is that your focal point, which in this case is going to be the waterfall, that would suggest that the focal point is on 1/3. But the reason that it's not a rule, and is a principle that works sometimes and not all the time, is that when you've got quite a symmetrical composition, so this here is almost like an arrow, isn't it? This rock formation at the top, it's an arrow that's pointing to the centre of the picture. There's an equal balance of weight either side. This mass of rocks visually is the same weight as this mass here. When you've got a symmetrical setup like that, it is usually best to put your focal point in the centre of your picture. So I'm just looking at the major rock shapes, just looking at the darkest tones, darkest values, and that helps me
to distinguish where they are. I think this rock here is quite important because it's going to be one that we put in a little bit more detail. So this is going to go back to what I was saying about how you need a combination of your looser, sketchier marks with some more detailed marks. And the more detailed mark making, the more careful mark making we want in and around our focal point. So here's a little tip. If you want to draw things like these in quite quickly, these tree stumps, I'm not looking at the shape of this tree, I'm looking at this shape in between the negative space. And that's easier to judge size-wise than it is to put one tree in and think about where the next one is and find you've run out of room before you can put them all in and you're squashing the last few into a small space. If you look at the negative space, so this space here, which is this space and this one, because they're abstract shapes, you don't have any reference for what they are, they're easier to judge. Anything that's abstract is easier visually for you to judge the size, the shape of. It's one of the key elements to, one of the key techniques, if you like, for learning how to draw. Okay, I think that will do. So as I said earlier on, I'm going to focus on this area at the top, the trees and sky. What I'm going to be doing is swapping very rapidly between pencils. I'm going to end up with a big bunch of pencils in one hand, my left hand, so that I can swap between them more quickly. Again, if you find that that's happening, that's great. It means you're in the right mindset. So I'm going to start with the white, as I often do, and I'm going to put that background sky in really quickly, using a lot of pressure, and then I'll add just a touch of blue over the top just to give it some colour. I'm not worried if I lose the tree shapes, as you can see, because I only need those to be in a rough position. As I get around these outer edges, I'm going to use less pressure because I'm going to put more colours down there. But here, lots of pressure, get rid of most of that paper surface right from the start. Okay, and then the blue. And I just want a touch, just the slightest touch, just towards the top there. I'm not going to do too much blending, if any, with my finger, because I like the way that pastel pencils blend themselves. It just keeps things a bit cleaner as well. I'm not going to blow any of the dust off either. I'm going to leave that for a while. Okay, so I'm going to go on to some of the trees now. And the trees are made up of a number of different colours. They're not just a flat brown, are they? They've got some subtle yellows and greens in there. Just think about what is your lightest colour that's within that. So I've got this light yellow colour. This is the 102. And I'm just going to lay some of that down where I can see it in these trees. This one hasn't got so much in, so maybe less on that one. Look how on the right hand side here, there's a lot of yellow. That's where the light's coming through. Got some in this one as well. So I'm thinking about moving quickly, keeping the pencil constantly moving. So very shortly I'm going to swap to an orange. I've kept the yellow in my hand, so I've got that to hand. So the lighter orange, let's get some colours in there. I want to let some of the yellow show through. Don't want to get rid of it all. I can start thinking now about the tree textures, the way that there's these lines in, these linear marks to represent the trunk texture. I want that quite light on that side. That one is going to be really dark, so I'm going to leave that one. Maybe a little bit more colour towards the bottom, or a little bit more pressure, darker colours there towards the bottom. Okay, and then I'm going to switch to this more red orange. Let's just get a little bit of that in. Again, I'm just thinking about the texture in the tree now. So I'm not just completely covering all the tree trunk with this one colour. Okay, and then I'm going to go to the brown, but the lighter of the browns. So this is the 182. So not really doing a great deal. I've got to use a lot of pressure just to get this to show up. On this tree here, so this one and this one, I think we can start to put in with this brown, and then we go over with the darker brown and some greens in a moment. Let's maybe put a little bit on this one. I've lost the shape of that, but that's fine. So just notice how this tree trunk has got this darker edge on the outside. So I just got to loosely represent that. It is still going to have one side darker, so this left-hand side is still darker overall than the right-hand side. That's what gives it that round form. Okay, switching to the darker brown now. Kept the pencils in my hand, so I've got those if I need to switch back. So I'm just thinking a bit more textural marks now. I think we can get a few more reds in this one. Some really nice, strong reds in this. So I'm not trying to be neat at all. I'm trying to be quite the opposite. So I want rough edges to the marks. This one here, we can start to put in with a lot more strength. I want to get some green into that one as well. I can see some yellowy greens in that. This one's really dark. So we're going to need to go over with the grey and black for that one, but it's good to get those undercolours in. So for this tree here, darkest on the outside, so point of the pencil, and then you can just soften it off slightly as it gets towards the lighter side. Just get a bit more orange just on the terminator line there. If you've seen the Drawing Essentials course, you'll know what the terminator is. It's that point between the shadow where the light can reach and where it can't, that shadow line. Okay, next one. I'm going to leave those ones till a little bit later. In fact, I want to put a little bit more white over that just as a base layer. Let's get a touch more blue in there. So just noticing the marks on this tree here, so it's quite a lot of texture on this. Darker on this side than this side. Get a bit more orange in this one. Okay, and then let's go to our grey. And this is the darker grey, so it's the where are we? This is the 181. So I'm not going straight for the black just yet. I might need to put some black in there, but for now, I want to go see how this grey works. So this is a little bit further away from our focal point, if we assume the focal point is the waterfall. So I don't want to have my strongest values here. Strongest values are going to be around this area here. That's why I'm trying to avoid using the black on this particular area. If we can get away with making this grey the strongest value, I think that will work quite nicely. This is just the white here, just to add a bit of highlight here and there. There's a little highlight I added on that tree, which hopefully you saw that. Okay, and then I've got the black, but I'm just going to be very, very sparing with it. So just on the outer edges. Because there's so many colours laid down as well, it's not going to come up as a jet black. So this tree in particular is really silhouetted, really dark, so is this one. So I think we can afford to go over with some of the black. That will do nicely. So now I'm going to go on to the greens. So picked out 2 green colours, but before I put those down, I'm going to put some yellows down because they're lighter and I can see yellows around here, around this area as well. So I'm really pushing the pencil in quite hard, really using the point to get it in there. I want to keep it really loose on these outer edges because I don't care what's going on there. That's furthest point away from the focal point. So lots of pressure where I can see the yellow leaves and branches. And don't worry, you will, as we apply these greens, we are going to go over and cut into the edges of the trees, but that's not a problem. We can neaten those up to a fashion. We don't want them to be too neat later on. So this is the apple green now. And I'm not looking obviously at individual leaves, I'm looking at just masses of colour and shape. Lots of pressure, as much as I can get away with. As I feel I can get away without snapping the pencil. So this green I feel is a little bit too yellow. So if you think back to aerial perspective, if you've done any of the foundation courses, aerial perspective is that phenomena where things in the distance tend to be more blue. Less yellow, more blue. So this green is too yellow for me. I want to switch to a more bluey green. So I could go for the darker one, which was the 165, but I'm going to pick out another pencil, go for a more like a pea green. This is the 173. Okay, that one's nicer, so I'm going to stick with that one. So this is the 173. And what I can do with this now is start to draw in some of the distant branches and trees that we can see. Okay, let's switch to the darker green. So this is our 165. So just skipping the pencil around. I'm not trying to make marks like leaves. I'm just really pushing the pencil into the surface, keeping it nice and loose to the side. Maybe draw some of the trunks in and branches again with this green. Going to get rid of any of the white that's around the bottom there, because obviously the sky wouldn't be showing through this low down here. Okay, and then darker green. I did say I just wanted to get a little bit of green into this tree, into some of these as well. Again, just for the continuity purposes. Okay, so let's move on to this area here, to the rocks. So I'm going to go with the lighter grey first. This was the 273. And all I want to do is just start to establish some of the major shapes. So the lighter areas, I'm going to keep the white in my hand as well, are going to be a mix of the white and the grey. So again, lots of pressure. In fact, let's put these lightest highlight areas in first, so we don't forget about them and lose them. I'm not going to put the waterfall in, but I will put in the base. It's a nice light area there. Bit of white on this side, really loose here. Anywhere else we can see highlights. See a little bit one on a rock up here. Some around here. This is a bit lighter where the water's catching it there. Got a nice highlight. Let's see, where are we? Just around about here. So this bit I'm looking at. Maybe a little bit round here. And I think that will do. Just tone those down slightly with the grey. And now I can start putting in some of the biggest rock formations. Now what I want to do is just look for mid-tones. So I don't want any of these darkest areas, I don't want to put that down with the grey, because any colour that I put down before I put a black down is going to stop me from getting a really dark jet black that I want. And I do want it to be jet black in and around the focal area. So again, remember from the composition course that a focal point, one way to make a focal point is to use your strongest darks and your lightest lights. Use the two against each other. So we want to get our strongest darks around here, keep this here as one of our lightest lights. So I want nothing underneath to disturb the black, to stop it from sticking to the surface. So just laying down some colour, not worried about anything other than just basic shapes. So this isn't even grey here, it's green, but we can just add this undertone of grey first. Look how loose the marks are around this area, away from the focal point. As I get towards the focal point, I can be a little bit more careful. So this rock here has got this definite face to it. This is what I'm looking for in terms of detail. It's just those rock faces. This rock here, get the marks on really quickly, block the area in. A little bit of a highlight on there. Maybe not that much. Okay, let's go in with the lighter brown, because I'm definitely seeing some brown colours within that. Again, not too much. So if I add the brown over, so I'm looking at this face here, if I add the brown to the underlying white, that's going to give a nice stone texture. It's going to blend on the surface and give that nice stone texture. Really loose for this one. Okay, let's get our lighter yellow, lighter and the more canary yellow. I just want to start putting in a few of these marks in. Some light yellows up here. Let's get the canary yellows, get a mixture of those in. Okay, I think it's time to go to the green. So I'm going to go for that more olivey green, the one that I added in later on, but I'm also going to take the apple green. So the olivey green was 173, 186 for the apple green, and then the dark bluier green, the 165. I'm going to start with this apple green, because that's the one I think I can see the most of in the lighter colours, the lighter values. So all I'm doing now is I'm just looking for rock faces that aren't jet black, that are going to be around this area and this area, starting to apply some of the green. Definitely see a lot on this one here. This one that I want to take a little bit more care over. Okay, I think that's a good start. I'm going to go with the darker green now, so start getting that down as a base colour. So I can definitely see this more bluey green in and around this rock here. Just take it through to where the waterfall is, but don't use as much pressure. So what I'm not worried here about is getting accurate shapes. What I want to do is get blocks of colour down, and the shapes I will make when I put in the very dark grey and the black. So we'll draw those in towards the end, certainly the latter part. Just going to give a rough indication of the shadow around the moss. So the shadow area that's within this mossy growth on the rock. Okay, brown, so darker brown this time. This is the 177. It'd be a good idea just to get either the lighter brown or both the lighter brown and the white, so that if you come across any lighter surfaces, you can just create those with the combination of the 2 or 3 pencils. So I'm looking at that one there. We've already put that one in. It is quite a light colour. Look at the highlights around here. You're not going to get everyone. You're just trying to look, or trying to spot 1 or 2 here and there. Okay, one colour I haven't used is the orangey red. So this is probably such a vibrant colour that I'm probably going to stick to it at the end, but I just want to see what it looks like in the context of the colours I've got down so far. And I think it is a little bit too vibrant to be using at this stage. I think we'll come on to that at the end. It's sticking to the paper surface really well, which is great. So we'll be able to use that at the end. So I'm going to go to our dark grey now, which is the 181. And this is where I can start to draw in the shapes, get a little bit more careful. So I'm going to start around the focal point. Lots of pressure now. Still want to work reasonably quickly, but I just want to take a little bit more care so that I can draw the shapes in more accurately. So we put a little bit of this colour just underneath the waterfall with a bit of lighter pressure. And that way when the white goes over, it will turn that into a lighter grey. All I'm doing now is just looking for dark blocks of tone. And hopefully you can see the ones that I'm seeing as I lay these colours down. Now, if you've been paying attention, one of the things that I said not 5 minutes ago was that I didn't want to put any colour down the darkest areas when I'm going to put the black, because that's going to stop me from laying down the darkest tones of black. And I've forgotten about that and I've gone and done it. So that's going to stop me from putting those really strong darks down. So when you come to do this drawing, if you have a go at this one, make sure that you reserve a bit of the area of paper around this area here. And I'll describe that when I come onto it in a moment. Keep it completely clean paper surface, and that way when you put your black on, you'll get a really, really nice strong value. And it's those really strong values that are going to give you the punch that will make your drawing stand out. This is a lost edge here, isn't it? You can hardly see the edge of this rock. Don't be afraid to cover a lot of this drawing with really dark values where you can't see anything, because that's how it is. If you try and, or if you're scared to use those really dark values, that's when your picture ends up looking flat and a little bit insipid. Okay, so just make another pass with the grey, keep maybe the mid-brown in your hand and one of the greens, and just neaten up any of the areas that, and when I say neaten up, you know, in the context of this drawing, it's not going to be really neat, but we want to just give an impression, a realistic impression. So anywhere that you feel that it needs that, just neaten those areas up. Certainly around this central area of the waterfall, I've tried to keep these rocks a little bit more descriptive. So I'm just looking at where there's lighter areas, highlights. So the light is obviously coming down here because it's catching the light here, catching the rocks I should say here and here, and then it's hitting this which is quite light. So we've got some lighter areas, some lighter faces of the rock. Got a little highlight just here and there. So I'm going to put some of our light yellow on this, just on the edges of the moss. A little bit on the top of this rock maybe. Lots of pressure, much as I can get away with. Okay, I think it's time to go to the black now. So this is where I might come unstuck a little bit, although it's going on reasonably well, but you will get a darker tone, as I say, if you just put this on neat to the paper surface. Now what I'm aiming for here, if I just take a moment, I'm aiming for really strong darks around this area, and then I'm gradually going to soften those off around the outer edges. So I don't want any really strong blacks around here. I want them all centered around the waterfall, the top part, the bottom part of the waterfall, and then feathering off. some just around the bottom of this rock, just at the water's edge. So you can see I'm not using as stronger darks here. I'm using more sketchier shading marks, hatching marks. Whereas here I want them to be solid black areas of tone value. None of the surface or colours underneath showing through. Just want to put a little bit more grey, a bit more colour down behind the waterfall there. That was the wrong grey. It's supposed to be the lighter grey. Okay, I'm just going to address this area here because I'm going to try and go for an impression of the water hitting it. It may work, it may not in this loose style. So I put the lighter value down first, the white. So I'm just going to touch in some darker greys. And then the black. So one tip for this is just to defocus your eyes. And you'll see that even though there are some white highlights in there where the water's catching the edge, overall it's still a dark value. It's still a really strong dark. Just going to pick out a little bit of detail, so slightly lighter green here. And then what I think will be nice, because again it's a real strong focal point, where we've added some of the blue in the sky, a little bit of continuity purposes, just add some touches of blue. Just the merest hint, merest touch, just to give it a little bit of extra interest in that area. Okay, let's get that waterfall in. So sharp pencil, nice sharp white pencil. And this side, lots of pressure. Because there's not a lot of pastel underneath, it goes on really nice. I'm just releasing the pressure down here. And that really is all it needs. Maybe just blur the edge here just to show there's a bit of water spray, water mist coming up. Any highlights that you think it needs or you want to tone some down, you can do. So I think this one here just needs to be broken up a little bit. It's a little bit too strong, that one. Okay, let's have a go with the water then. What colour do we go for? Well, I'm just going to look for the dominant colour within this, and to me it's like a browny orange colour. So the lighter of those two colours, if we're going to work light to dark, is obviously going to be the orange. So this is the 186. That's obviously far too light, but this is the colour that I want to get down first. I want to try and keep all of these marks nice and horizontal as well. So horizontal to the bottom of the picture plane. And then with a finger, doesn't matter if it's not too clean, just going to drag downwards just to soften those. And then I'm going to go to this darker grey. So the 181. I just want to pick out the areas of dark within that. So I'm just looking for this here, this area of dark. Then we can get some nice greens in there as well. Let's get the dark green. So if you defocus your eyes, you'll see that this is all really dark around here. Okay, and then I've got this area here, which I and it looks like some rocks sticking up from the surface. So instead of going in with the white first, because they are really light, I'm going to put some grey down, and then I think when I add the white then it will blend with that grey and give a nice subtle light grey rather than the stark white, because I don't want there to be too much attention on these. It's going to detract from our focal point. Okay, so I'm going to get the white, the dark grey and the black, and just pick out some highlights. And some shadows. So this pencil could definitely do with being sharper, but for a study like this we don't need the details, so you can get away with a blunter pencil. Okay, I got the black, so I just pick out a few just of the darkest highlights just to give this a little bit of shape and form, not too much. Still want them to be quite abstract with them being further away from the focal point. And then there's a nice subtle reflection of the waterfall, so I think that's really important to put in. So what I want to do is look at the curvature here, and then I want the opposite curvature. So I actually want a blunt pencil for this. If you've got a scrap bit of paper that you can do to the side, just get yourself a nice flat edge. And then really light pressure. So this is all about subtlety. And then if you just pick out just the odd darker value just underneath it, that'll give it a bit more of a sense that it's a reflection rather than just a white line you've put through the drawing. So little bits of orange through it, little bits of grey. Okay, so I think we're coming to the end now, and all I want to do is to put in some really bright, vibrant colours for the leaves. So picking out those yellows and those oranges. This is where our orange, our 188, is going to come into good use. I'm going to go for the really light yellow, which is the 102, and the white as well, which I'm going to be able to blend with the other colours just to lighten them up as well. So I'm going to start with this bright orange colour because I know it goes on really nicely. And all I want to do is look for just little bits of detail here and there. So here's a tip as well. So this rock has got form to it, and by that I mean it's got a curvature to it. It's not just a flat shape. And the way that you can help to emphasize that, even in a loose study like this, is to make your brightest marks, your brightest leaf shapes on this central area. And as it curves away into the shadow, we can dull those down, tone them down. A few yellows. So what I can do is just use the white just to pick out a few of the brightest ones down the centre, and then just with your finger around the outer edges, if you just touch those back, maybe use the duller orange for those around the outside. Okay, I think we can leave it at that. So I don't want to do too much to this with it being quite a loose study. We can maybe make this centre tree a little bit darker, certainly on the left-hand side. That's going to bring us down into our focal point. So just conservatively, not too much. It's so easy to get carried away and start fiddling with stuff and trying to make it a bit neater. But I'm going to any second now resist the urge to do that and finish. In fact, I'm going to call that done there and leave it as it is. I think it's achieved what I set out to achieve. It's quite loose and impressionistic, but it still gives a sense of the place, and it mixes those really loose marks around the outer edges with some more careful, more deliberate marks around the centre there.